All right. I see some familiar faces. How many people have already been to a desegregation town hall that are left in this room? Raise your hand. Please raise your hand. Don't be shy. Raise your hand. Okay. Most of the people. So this is what I propose we do. For those of you that have already been to a desegregation town hall, this will feel very redundant because it is the same presentation. But I see a couple new friends in the house, and I want to make sure everybody gets the information that they came for now that you've had a chance to enjoy a lovely dinner. But we are a rather small and intimate group. And so if I could invite folks who are planning to stay for the rest of the presentation, or even for part of it, maybe to gather here at these front two tables, then I will get started. Normally, the technology field questions, but we're such an intimate group, I'm going to just pass a microphone and we can do it that way. This presentation is really designed to unpack the nuts and bolts of the settlement agreement with the State Attorney General and allow folks to ask questions and get some questions answered. So I'm going to dig in, and I think because of the size of our group, I'll definitely get us out of here before 8 o'clock, but perhaps even before. So I'm going to get started. And feel free to stop me at any point. You need a clarifying question. But welcome, we're glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Those of you that were in the Desegregation Advisor Group, thank you for staying. I'd like to start with this anecdote. Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives. And so, whatever perspective you hold or position that you hold or direction that you approach this meeting from, what this is really about is us moving forward and being defined by some past hurts. So I'm going to review the complaints against the district by the Attorney General. I'm going to review the judgment or settlement agreement, aka the parameters of the Desegregation Advisory Group, the comprehensive education plan, the scholarship and counseling requirements, the requirements around interdistrict attendance, the requirements around monitoring and oversight, accountability, and time limits, and talk about some potential things. So, again, since we're such a small group, what I'm going to ask you to do is just turn to an elbow partner instead of getting up and moving around. What's one hope? And what is one question that you have for tonight? One hope, one question. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, two minutes, give or take, each partner. Choose who's going to go first. Choose who's going to go second. And share your hope and share your question. Partner A, you may begin. to switch partners. Please thank your partner for sharing and go ahead and switch. Go ahead and thank your partner. I like to use this framework to have courageous conversations. It's a framework designed specifically to scaffold conversations around race and equity, but it can be used for multiple intersections of power and oppression. And basically what Glenn Singleton and Curtis Linton laid out when they made this compass for courageous conversation was that most people enter this conversation from one of these four quadrants. They enter it from a feeling or emotional quadrant. And if you came to this meeting tonight, maybe in some feels, that's a good and right place for you to be. That's a normal place for people to enter the conversation. If you came from a space of really wanting to do something, wanting to act, a social space, that's also a good and right place to be. You're in the right place for you. If you came here with an intellectual thinking frame, that also is a good and right place to be, natural place. And if you came here from a believing or moral standpoint, that is also a good and right place to be. Maybe attached to church or your family or some other beliefs. That's often where our moral beliefs come from. But the idea behind the compass is not just to stay in our quadrant, but is really to be able to move to the center and to remain in conversation when things get tough. Because usually what people do when they start to feel uncomfortable, they back away. Funny thing about adults, when we feel overwhelmed or we feel it's too difficult or we feel something's terrifying, we get into an alarm zone. This is the outer ring of the circle behind me. And very little learning happens for us as adults when we feel this way. We shut down, we get protective, we close our eyes, we close our ears, we close our hearts, we close our minds. We make sure that we're safe. But the other funny thing about adults is when we're too comfortable, when we're not challenged, we also don't learn very much. And we're very much programmed to remain comfortable as adults. Most of you probably have a routine. You get up in the morning, you do the same set of things, and get yourself out the door. And if that routine gets interrupted, it can be a really tough day. That's an example of how much we're programmed to remain in our comfort zone. And so the idea, really, if we're going to learn together, is that it needs to be interesting and challenging and a little scary. It has to be this zone of discomfort that we have to remain in. And so a lot of these are neurological processes. These are proved by neuroscience. And if you're not already sitting with your arms folded, I want to invite everybody in the room to go ahead and fold your arms. Go ahead and fold your arms. Everybody fold your arms. I guess you're okay, Quinn. So what you probably don't know is you have been folding your arms the same way your entire life. Since you first learned to fold your arms when you were a baby, you fold your arms with the same arm on top and the same arm on the bottom. It's part of your routine. It's part of your comfort. So what I'm going to ask you to do is unfold, look which arm's on top and which arm's on the bottom, and unfold your arms and try to put the other arm on top. How does it feel? I can't. How does it feel? It doesn't feel right. How does it feel? Kind of uncomfortable, right? So what I did was actually I just gave you a physical amygdala hijack. I got you out of your comfort zone. I got you out of your routine. I turned on your fight, flight, or freeze response in your brain. And so take a moment and notice where you experience the discomfort. Because that place, that feeling, is your opportunity to learn. And so at any point tonight, if you start to feel discomfort, the kind of discomfort that maybe would make you want to walk away or push away normally from a conversation or from a space, I'm inviting you to lean in tonight. Because that is our area of growth. I like to use this graphic. It's a graphic by Margaret Wheatley. And it shows how organizations and communities usually function. And what you see above the green line are visible things, patterns, structures, processes. This is usually where we work to create change. But the funny thing about her model is what she calls technical things. Only about 5% of change in an organization or community comes from making technical fixes. But we spend about 95% of our energy trying to change structures and patterns and processes. And then we all look around at our organization and our society and wonder why we don't get very much change. Well, the thing is, change happens below the green line. It happens in the space that you can't see. It happens in what she calls the relational space. And that's where relationships and information and identity live. And so what you see here is this 6-circle model nested in a larger 7th circle, which represents systems of advantage, systemic oppression, and equity and social justice, and how all of those ideas play into what we can see in our community and in our organization and what we can't see. And so the invitation tonight is actually to focus on information, relationships, and identity, because that's where the real work of transformation occurs. And so those of you who were at the DAG got a full dose of this, but those of you that missed that meeting, the vision is really for healing and uniting under a diverse, shared community identity that we can be proud of. One of the things that I remember most about growing up in this community is that the freeway is and was, particularly was, back in the late 80s and early 90s, much more than just a physical dividing line. It was literally like crossing a border. And there were very few of us that didn't grow up in Marin City that could easily move back and forth. And I had the great blessing to be one of those people. But there were some consequences for doing that. When I grew up, we got pulled over coming and going in Marin City by the Marin County sheriffs. Every time. In and out. Now, times have changed and the community's changed, but the division in between our two communities hasn't changed as much as it needs to. And part of what I believe strongly is that defining ourselves as a shared community, telling our own story, controlling our own narrative is critical to supporting that change and that transformation and really celebrating the strength of what is the 94965, what is Sausalito and Marin City together. Celebrating our difference to create culturally and linguistically competent communities and really support equity. Although I had some experiences here growing up that were tough, I also had some experiences that were incredibly unique, that launched me out into the world, that gave me so much opportunity because I was able to move in both spaces. I was sharing earlier with Mrs. Kodama that, you know, for me being a biracial person allowed, and being somewhat racially ambiguous, allowed me to move in many, many different spaces. And that was a gift that I would have never had without Marin City. It's a gift that truly paved a way for me in my life, and it's a gift, I believe, for all of our children. It's one of the most important things that you can have in the world, is to be able to be comfortable in multiple spaces with different kinds of people. It means you can travel around this world and do almost anything. But if you don't know how to do that, doesn't matter the background that you come from, our opportunities remain limited. And that's really the opportunity that stands before us if we're able together to engage in a collaborative decision-making process and a collaboration in our community. And so this is really an invitation to vision and imagine world-class programs that stimulate deeper learning and ignite individual passions, career pathways, college readiness programs, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, culturally and linguistically sustaining arts integration, really learning to become global citizens by valuing different perspectives, multiple perspectives, cultures and language, empowering families to work alongside our staff in support of student needs. And really, the foundation is that strong schools create strong communities. That we create a place where we can all feel safe in who we are and what we believe and who we become. And that really growing up in an engaging educational environment like this supports students and families to overcome the systemic barriers, allows them to be properly prepared, everybody in our community, for college and career, and most importantly, for our life. Let's skip through these because we're small. So, most of you in this room probably know who the State Attorney General is. But when I first did this meeting, we had about 80 or 100 people here, and people really asked the question, like, who is the AG? Why are they even involved in our community? Right? And so the State Attorney General in California is very similar to the Attorney General of the United States. They are the head of the State Department of Justice. They are the top law enforcement official in our state, much like the Attorney General of the United States of America. And so then State Attorney General Kamala Harris, in 2016, before her election to the Senate, filed a complaint against our Sausalito Marin City School District. And that complaint said that our district knowingly and intentionally maintained and exacerbated racial segregation in between Sausalito and Marin City. It said that our district intentionally established a segregated school and provided discretionary funding to support that segregation. The complaint said that we cut programs at our segregated school that led to the loss of dedicated and qualified teachers, and that our students were unprepared academically and socially for high school. The complaint stated that we failed to take steps to alleviate that segregation, and that we deprived students at this school and where we are sitting of an equal educational opportunity and an integrated education. And that is really the subtext, the whole subtext of the complaint by the Attorney General. Now, Kamala Harris went on to become a state senator, and newly elected State Attorney General Javier Becerra kept the complaint going. I knew when I said yes to this job that this complaint existed. I did not know the time frame for any settlement agreement. And I can share with you now, 7 months into the job, that I imagined that the settlement agreement would take place in, I don't know, December, February. Turned out, I got a call at the beginning of my 5th week on the job in early August that said, you have a press conference with State Attorney General Javier Becerra. We're going to announce this settlement agreement. It's been filed in Superior Court. And so, while I thought maybe I'd have some time to get my feet under me and figure out how to superintend, we all started this journey really quickly together. And so what that settlement agreement or what that judgment states is that we cannot violate the laws in the complaint in the future or during the term of the judgment, and that the judgment will last 5 years if the district meets with all of the orders contained in the judgment. And so what I'm going to do is go through what those are. If you are really interested in legalese and deciphering court documents, there is a tab on our district website that's marked Desegregation, and you can find the complaint and the text of the complaint, and you can find the settlement agreement or the judgment and the text of the judgment, and you can read it in all of its legal grandeur. What I have attempted to do here is kind of break it down a little bit so it's a little bit more accessible for us all. The judgment states that we have to form a desegregation advisory group by 11/6/19, and that group would make recommendations on all programs, education programs, how to reduce racial segregation, how to improve education programs, and that group must meet at least twice a year. I'm proud to say we just had our 3rd meeting right before this one. It allows for us to contract with qualified third-party experts on racial segregation, and that those experts can facilitate and organize the DAG, that they must be approved by the monitor or attorney general, that we need to conduct a needs assessment, and that we must design and implement a program to attract diverse students to our district. And we're required to put out a report to the monitor and the attorney general and myself within 45 days of each meeting. That kind of summarizes the minutes and what happened in the meeting. The composition of that group requires me to invite representatives, including but not limited to students, parents of students, public school administrators, public school teachers, community organizations, the Marin County Office of Ed, the Housing Authority, Health and Human Services, the City of Sausalito, and the Marin City Community Services District. I think the only people we were missing from the last meeting, and thank you all of you who came and all of you who stayed, as folks from the Housing Authority and Health and Human Services. They did say they were coming, but they didn't come. So, what does the Desegregation Advisory Group do? Review and input policies, procedures, practices, and any changes relating to the education program. Review and input student demographic data. Review and input the impact of any proposed program on student demographic data within the district, and specifically on race and ethnicity of students in any program. Review and provide input of community feedback regarding education programs in the district. Review and provide input relating to health and social services and other support programs available to students. And review and provide input relating to other activities and events within our district that may affect racial segregation. So, I want to give you all an opportunity to talk to each other a little bit about what you just heard. I'll give you, say, 5 minutes. What do you think? What did you hear? What questions might you have? So go ahead, turn and talk to a partner, and I'll ring you back in a few minutes and see what you might wonder, what you might want to ask.
If you have your switch partners, go ahead and thank your partner on the switch.
haven't already, go ahead and thank your partner for sharing. And want to take a moment, open it up to the floor. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? I know I had one good question.
We would like to know, based on the 2 meetings that have already been held by the DAC segregation group, what Dr. Garcia sees as the best 2 recommendations that they've made so far.
Thank you for asking that. So I think I want to stay in a couple spaces. One, I'll get to your direct question, but I want to answer around it a little bit too. In the first DAG meeting, we spent time reviewing the historical timeline of education, legislation, and policy in the United States of America. We actually started in 1646. And when we got to 1925, that's when the historical timeline of education in Sausalito and Marin City really starts, public education. And it was a really wonderful experience just to look at how the experience we've had in our community fits into a larger historical context in our country around the meaning and purpose of education, what it was, our educational system was designed for. And one of the most telling quotes from that exercise is Thomas Jefferson. Real early on, before our country is actually a country, supports the development of a public education system, what he calls a 2-track system. One for the learned and one for the laboring. The track for the laboring was intended to, and I quote directly, rake a few geniuses from the rubbish. And so this was a conception that our education system was really founded on. And looking at the history of education in our community, I think it became very clear for everybody in the room that there has been a crazy seesaw back and forth between Sausalito and Marin City around resources and around schools almost since schooling began in our community. And I think that was a really important realization. Sometimes it swings this way, sometimes it swings that way. But we've never truly found a real balance. The other thing that happened was that David Duncan, who's an expert advisor to the DAG, who is the child of a white man who was part of the voluntary desegregation effort in the 1960s, is getting his master's degree in history from UC Santa Cruz on that voluntary desegregation effort. And he shared with us some interviews and some experiences so that hopefully this journey that we're embarking upon can be informed by some lessons of the past. And there were some really important revelations in the audio interviews that he shared from people that lived that experience, desegregated themselves. And that was a very profound space to be in, and something that we learned. But probably the most exciting thing about that meeting was that we all got to learn together, everybody in the room. People that maybe don't always sit at the same table or sitting at the same table and having a great conversation. We did some good below the green line work. We did some work on relationship, and we did some work on information, and we did some work on identity. What came out of today's meeting that I think is just fabulous is actually the same thing, but we also shared the working group recommendations for most of the work groups that have been involved in the unification process. And I think roundly everybody in the room cited the work of the curriculum group as being truly inspiring, breaking work that can create the best school in our county, maybe in our state, maybe even in our country. It's a wonderful vision for what a school curriculum can look like. And so that would be my answer to that question. Anybody have any other things they want to share?
Good night, everybody. Well, I just have many concerns about the way they taken to able to expedite the process to give the services to our students or our children still in the school, because they say they're supposed to be had to reduce the impact to our students or our community here. What the general officer, Xavier, planning to do, because we not only have the problem here, but we're glad, like the community standing up to say something happened in Marin County. Because this is basically, they put attention to here, but Marin County, we have that big problem in the juvenile hall and in many other schools. So I think it's time to, whatever happened here, we have to expedite the process to everybody be aware, because we have a lot of issues not only within the schools, we have a lot of issues in the law enforcement, include in the family courts, and even judges discriminate us because we are Latino, because we Spanglish, because we have children even with disabilities, because they don't have that support, because they don't have the IP, because they don't understand our children. And also many schools, they say, oh, you children don't qualify for this school, where they send them or in trouble to end it in juvenile hall, and also in foster homes, in foster groups, like after they end in the streets, missing children. So this is what we need to basically send a message to General Officer that I think is enough, and we had to stand in not only for Marin City, but also for our community, and also for another investigation we do is through all the country. So we was very concerned about many messages also they send to another schools, like we have a problem. But I think we're glad we're here, because maybe it's the time to everybody notice we are in the same problem. But I think it's time to put everything together to put it in general officer, the state, they had to put attention on us.
Thank you. I think you're right. I think that is the opportunity before us. We have the privilege of creating a blueprint that could work in other places, right? And that's the challenge before us too, is figure it out together. But I think you're right. You know, if we can come up with some great solutions here in Sausalito, Marin City, it can serve as a template for the rest of the county, maybe even the rest of the Bay Area. You know, although we were tabbed, you can see these conditions all over the state, all over the city of Oakland, all over the city of Richmond, all in the Central Valley. There's hyper-segregated schools, right? And so what you're asking for is what this mandates. And so the original agreement said that by February the 4th, that would be next week, we must conduct an assessment of community needs, that the community includes all areas within the district containing residences and any additional areas the district sees fit, and that the assessment must include but not be limited to parents of children under 8 residing in the district, community organizations, representatives of our teachers union, representatives of our classified union, parent representatives of Bayside MLK, chosen by parents at Bayside MLK, TAM Union High School District, the Marin County Office of Ed, and the Marin Community College District. I'm glad to report that we did get about a 6-week extension on this date, so you can look for these reports and these results in March. Otherwise, I'd be probably typing right now. So what needs to go in the comprehensive plan? It's got to be designed to attract students throughout the district of all backgrounds. Incorporate existing community resources. Make sure that we have single subject credentialed teachers in English, math, and science for 7th and 8th grade students. That it has to have a mission and a vision statement. That it has to have long-term funding. And that teacher retention and recruitment and program leadership are a component of this plan. That it has to foster a positive interaction amongst student groups, and that its discipline policies encourage community building and communication, and that there is equitable and unambiguous discipline policies that limit exclusionary discipline. What that means is we really have to have some tight limits on kicking kids out of school. That can't really be part of our plan. That it has to include a plan for community and family engagement and program marketing. And that it has to have professional learning for all staff on working with diverse classrooms and encouraging positive intergroup interactions. And that there be the eligibility of the program for special funding, including grants. We were originally supposed to present this plan by February the 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, at an open board meeting, and that we would have distributed to the public by 7 days before that open board meeting, and that the Attorney General's office be notified and receive a copy of the plan 7 days before that open board meeting. Again, we have had that deadline moved to mid-March. Well, I mean, this is the first desegregation order in the state of California in 50 years. So I would hesitate to draw a conclusion or make an assumption about the Attorney General's motivation other than what's stated in the complaint. But what I can share with you confidently at this point is I've been doing some research into complaints and consent decrees and agreements that exist around the country. And the closest thing that I can find that mirrors what we're being asked to do is in Birmingham, Alabama. And it was a consent decree put in place in 2016. And the details of this settlement agreement are, while not exact, are close to the Birmingham agreement. And so you can draw whatever conclusion you like there regarding that, but that's what my research has uncovered so far. And that by July 1st, 2020, and we don't have an extension on this, we gotta have a plan by March, and we gotta put it in place by July. Now, yes, Ms. Terry.
You know, I'm with the part because this time frame is very unrealistic. There are significant gaps that we haven't addressed, and anyone that knows anything about community engagement and planning is going to take more time than this. And I think one of the things we need to do is to address the Attorney General and state that, and not say March. We need to hire on. You know, I know you're up against some time, especially on what happens to public for facilities and whatever. Let's do that. We can agree on that. But if we really want to have buy-in from the parents and from the community, you need more time. We're going to have to spend money on outreach to get folks involved. And I just, you know, there's one thing that say, hey, we want to present. We want to get when we present well. There's nothing like presenting something to folks and you don't have buy-in from people. This can have a real negative effect. And that's not what we're trying.
It's not, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think what this actually states is we have to start implementation, but not finish it by July 1st, right? And so our plan might be to do this over a 3 or a 5 year period, right? And I think I agree with you. It was one of the big lessons actually from the voluntary desegregation from the 1960s that I think it is incumbent upon us not to repeat. They tried in basically the space of 1 year to throw everybody together in a school and cross their fingers and hope it worked. And it didn't work, right? And so I think what our plan can be that has to start in July 1st is a careful plan, a plan that is thoughtful, maybe that's done in stages, right, over time, so that we don't repeat that history of the past, so that we build that buy-in that you're talking about. Right? It's not an end date, it's a start date. And so that's my understanding of what the Attorney General wants to see. The overall plan, the draft plan, not the final plan, but a draft plan needs to be submitted and presented. And then, as you'll see here, there's some time built in for questions or pushback or adjustments.
On the prior slide with your comprehensive plan details, a lot of those, do you have kind of a breakdown of what you may have had before, what close to, what's going to be to? Some of that detail, I don't know, like the credited teachers, for 7th and 8th grade, where are you on that? Vision statements. Which one of these things? Most where we already have some stuff that's low hanging fruit. Is that kind of breakdown available off slide?
That's a really interesting question. I think I can make it available. I'd say probably where we're closest to being able to execute, like, say within the next 6 weeks, is around community and family engagement, is around program marketing, is around professional learning for everybody and working with diverse classrooms and encouraging positive intergroup interactions. I think the philanthropy group did some wonderful work around, creating a funding, at least outline. I think we need to fill it in. I think we need to answer some of the questions that you're posing, Ms. Terry, to really fill it in, right? You got to be clear on what you're asking for if you're going to go ask somebody for some money. I think we're close on incorporating community resources. I think we're far, actually, on single subject credential teachers. I'm not going to be able to hire 3, well, we have an English teacher, so let me back that up. But I'm probably not going to be able to hire 2 math and science teachers by this fall, right? That's part of this plan that's probably 2 or 3 years out. I'm building a teacher of color pipeline. I'm trying to recruit I'm trying to build it so the candidates are here when we're ready. But to be completely transparent right now, I can't hire 2 full-time teachers for 20 kids. You can't do it, right? Now, talking about a unified school, sure, we can. I think that's one of the reasons that we need to look so closely at unification as a pathway. That makes a lot of the stuff on here that I just didn't mention as low-hanging fruit into low-hanging fruit. But I will work to create that. I thank you for posing that. That's helpful. And thank you, Ms. Terry, for your comments as well. I missed a bullet point there. It's supposed to start on July the 1st. And we must promote it with a comprehensive plan and promotional campaign. And we may hire a PR firm that we have. And it must continue implementation until the termination of the judgment. But here's where you see some of the flexibility about the plan. We can use our LCAP. We can inform it with all the amazing work from the unification work groups and the unification town halls. It must continue until the termination of the judgment, and if the plan or campaign fails, the Attorney General may require further action. And so there is some time and space built in, but I want to give you all an opportunity again to talk amongst yourselves and see if anybody else has any other questions. Just because of the intimacy of the group and the time, I'll give you 3 minutes this time instead of 5. Go ahead, Ricardo.
It's just an observation. I'm one who believes in indicators, and I'm one who believes in systems. What we have up there, multi-systems and whatnot. Collectively, if you could get them into a constellation of reportable items and reportable indicators, they could represent a work in progress. Because this is just a background of things that we have always experienced in the past, and NIMBYism, classism, and things like that. And I know damn well we're not going to solve the problem of discrimination. Not even NIMBYism, or people who have resources, property taxes, want to see that they for their children. And like Shirley pointed out, what they wanted to do with the MLK, what you say, make it a community center. And that got me, will not work, for the district, I don't think. But what could work in my estimation is we thought really thoroughly about how we frame works in progress, how we attach certain type of indicators that have meaning to the AT, how it would have meaning to people that we're trying to get engaged from the community and things like that. But it's a big team effort.
I agree. And I think, what was so exciting about the meeting that we just had is that it actually got significantly along the way to what you just mentioned, which is a work in progress, but has some indicators, has some conceptions, has some benchmarks, has some things to look at, has some things to measure.
The thing is we need to get people in as close as possible into their comfort zone, as close as possible we can. That's a volatile situation anyway. But if you give people the right type of indicators, you should let them know, that we're making present, we're closing the equity gaps, we're doing the funding, the curriculum is being implemented. We narrowed down the LCAP to where it's being implemented and effectiveness. What's the impact on people's comfort overall? Just the overall comfort. Now, everybody's going to be satisfied. If we can get them there, I feel a little bit better. I feel a little bit better, more better. Things like that. As these indicators keep coming in, and we keep doing the work.
So we have a bunch of surveys that are out that are asking those kind of questions. And, it's my commitment to continue to give them as benchmarks through the progress.
Well, because, the deadline is very soon, basically. I think that as community or members or people they concerned about the future knowledge, because this is not only affected African America, Hispanic America, or poor people, basically we are it is affecting the whole entire community because we live in together.
That's right.
So then I guess it's time to reorganize and make a team, to monitor what is that need to be done to be able to work, maybe like 2% or what exactly they need for us. Because we need to finish to be able to complete the plan done. Otherwise, we will be running in circles. And then I guess it's time to monitor who's doing this job or what is going to be done to be able to support the person to do that. Otherwise, because I have information, I know what we need, but how do we do it to do it done?
So one thing I want to encourage all of you to do is I'm going to put a big piece of chart paper out. And that group that you're talking about is the desegregation advisory group that I went through in slides. So some people stayed for that meeting. And so I want to make sure if you weren't there, that you're there next week. And then there's 2 more meetings after that. And that's really the charge of that group. And we want as many people there as can be there and have the passion and the interest that you're expressing. And so, so there's a few other things that are outlined in the plan. And I am happy to say that we will launch these in the right time frame. There's both beneficiaries and special beneficiaries outlined in the comprehensive education plan. The beneficiaries are students that attended Bayside MLK for 4 or more consecutive months from August 1st, 2013 to June 13th, 2019. And special beneficiaries are any students that attended BMLK for 4 or more consecutive months between August 1st, 2014 and June 13th, 2019 in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. And we are charged with continuously providing an academic and career counseling program to all beneficiaries by February. That comprehensive academic and career counseling program must be provided whether or not a beneficiary is enrolled in any trade school or educational institution. The program will advise and assist beneficiaries with long-term academic and career goals, resume composition and job applications, higher education applications, placement in vocational programs and the workforce, identifying grants, scholarships, and other programs to provide financial or other support necessary to provide access to continuing higher education or skilled workforce employment. Beneficiaries can participate at no cost, for free. Beneficiaries will receive 20 hours. Special beneficiaries will receive 40 hours. I'm proud to announce that as part of our Teacher of Color Pipeline Initiative, the Compass College and Career Counseling Program at College of Marin has agreed to partner with us and deliver these services. And 10,000 Degrees has agreed to partner with us on the next part of this, which is a scholarship program for special beneficiaries and beneficiaries.
Always lingering in the background of all these systems and programs is the use or the need for data. And sometimes the use of it, the data can be specific to a funding organization. And a lot of times, everybody gets into this data field without really looking at the quality of the data, more or less quantitative stuff and whatnot. You have it's up to you. Do you have an idea how you won't let old data, collective data, overwhelm the process of organizing?
Absolutely. I am a mixed methods researcher. I believe always in triangulating quantitative data with qualitative data. People's stories matter. We actually have conducted a series of focus groups with students here at Bayside MLK. We're going to do it over at Willow Creek. We're going to do it at Tam High. We are also going to run some focus groups, and really the unification town halls and the work groups have also served as some large focus groups, right, to get people's story and get people's qualitative experience. And so we are reaching out to our partners at the Success Network at TAM and at TAM High to help us collect both quantitative and qualitative data from many of the students that will become beneficiaries or special beneficiaries. We are using focus groups and video documenting them. So we will actually have a series of videos that come out from those focus groups. So, yep. And so that's kind of our plan for that. And Dr. Christina Limer, who is one of the experts in the Desegregation Advisory Group, that's actually her area of expertise, and that's why we retained her. She's been doing all the survey design for us. She's been designing all the focus group questions, and the whole group of expert advisors actually will weigh in on that as well. So you should see that reflected in the comprehensive education plan, absolutely. We are charged with providing assistance to the counseling program to identify and notify beneficiaries. We will identify and notify all beneficiaries within 1 year of February of this year of establishing the counseling program of all benefits. We will identify and notify all beneficiaries that have not responded to outreach efforts, and any beneficiary that is not enrolled will receive additional notification upon high school graduation. So what we have, if you do the math, is we have 2 cohorts of kids that have graduated high school already. Class of 2017, actually, pardon me, 3 cohorts of kids. Class of 2017, class of 2018, and class of 2019 that would have been beneficiaries or special beneficiaries. We will have a 4th cohort of kids that will graduate in 2020. And thankfully, both College of Marin Compass and Tam High have agreed to help us identify those kids. One of the things that many of you may know, but some of you may not know, is that our district office burned down in 2015. And in the bottom of the district office was every paper enrollment record and CUME folder and all of the evidence of who our students were prior to 2015. Now, we have some evidence in Aries that we're going to pull, but we're actually going to really need help from our community partners to identify folks. Luckily, 10,000 Degrees and the Hannah Project and a few other people that have relationships in the community with our kids, because some of our kids didn't go to Tam High. But we have a commitment from the Tam Union Superintendent, just in case they went to Redwood or Drake. We're going to need help from our private school partners that know that maybe have our kids to help identify.
Well, I have a question because, for example, my kids, we was here until 2016. My younger daughter, 16, she will be graduate this year. She have a hard time with math because that was the major concern over here in our community at that time. And then I have it's another student also, she will be graduate, but it's a struggle right now too to able to graduate in high school. So we don't know because we move. So we want to know if that's possible to be able to reach out, to send us the information we need so these kids can have the tutors or whatever they need to be able to be finished the high school in connected to the College of Marine, because many people or persons like me, we don't know. And so then maybe we need it. And I ask them to the schools if they know about this, and some of them, they don't even know what I'm talking about.
So thank you. So that is why we will launch the program in the next couple of weeks and do that outreach. And one of my commitments is to get everything translated into Spanish as well, so that the home language of our families can be accessible, so the information can be accessible. That's part of what we're charged to do. And so I'll make sure we reach out to you and any of your daughter's friends. And I mean, this is a prime example of how we're going to actually get to all the beneficiaries, right? Because you also know who went here. And many of our community members know people that went here. Thank you, Stevie. We're going to have to partner with Women Helping All Children. We have to partner with every educational institution that is in our community to really do this work. And it is our commitment to market the heck out of it once we launch it on social media, in print media. You should see it all over. And if you don't, come back and we'll make sure we get it. We had to establish our scholarship fund by last September. I'm glad to say we did that. That scholarship fund must operate continuously for 10 years, and it has to cooperate with the counseling program. That's why the partnership between 10,000 Degrees and Compass is so important for us. Each year on January 1st and July 1st, a minimum of $50,000 needs to be available to the scholarship program for the next 6 months. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We'll be working with them on identification, with Bridge the Gap on identification. We met with Betty as well. 10,000 Agreements seems to have had a little bit more bandwidth to take on this program, maybe because they serve a lower number of students, I don't know. We did invite Bridge the Gap to be into the conversation, and we definitely will need their help in identifying beneficiaries and special beneficiaries. And there's room for more people. You know, I don't want to speak for Laura. I would surmise just the transition in leadership that they're undergoing right now might have had some effect on that, but we'll take any and all help we can get. We need it. And so I'll make sure I reach back out, and thank you for offering that. The scholarship program is intended to be a remedy for operating a segregated school and a racially discriminatory education program. That's what it says in the judgment, verbatim. The scholarship allocation must be an amount equivalent to community college tuition at a California community college. We have pegged that amount to tuition at College of Marin. This is about $1,500 per semester, $3,000 a year. There's no need for full-time enrollment, employment status, completion of academic program, or age. Can be used for any type of college or trade program. You must be enrolled at least part-time. We can decline an allocation only if all of the following things occur. So really what this says is we really can't decline any allocations because the likelihood of all these things occurring is slim to none. If a beneficiary has already received a scholarship allocation for enrollment in the same program and they did not complete the program they received the allocation for, and the previously allocated tuition was not refunded to the program, and the beneficiary was not called to active military duty. All four of those things need to happen for us to deny an allocation. And none of them must have occurred due to a natural disaster, serious health condition, or the need to care for a spouse, child, parent, or domestic partner with a serious health condition. This is meant to be very accessible, low strings attached scholarship. And what I'm proud to say, because I actually just had this meeting last night so we could finalize the application and get it out on this timeline, is that to qualify, beneficiaries must submit the following: transcripts, documents to confer status as a beneficiary, document to confirm the beneficiary is eligible for enrollment in a program that meets the requirements of the scholarship, and that the scholarship may directly pay tuition for the beneficiary. Well, some of you may be aware that currently tuition to community college in the state of California is free. So we decided that perhaps this wouldn't be all that helpful. And so we've expanded what this can cover beyond tuition. We're going to make it so that it can cover food and books and transportation and even some housing costs for our students, since tuition is free. Special beneficiaries will be limited to the equivalent of 4 semesters of full-time enrollment or 6 quarters of full-time enrollment. It's basically 2 years. If you do the math, $3,000 over 2 years, $6,000 for special beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are limited to 2 semesters or 3 quarters of full-time enrollment, which is about $3,000. The amount can be prorated across semesters, quarters, or terms if not enrolled full-time in a particular program, and can be prorated by a share of tuition paid by other public sources or other scholarships other than our scholarship program. So that's one of the other things that we're working on, is we're really hoping that our partners, both our university partners and our partners in Compass and 10,000 Degrees, will really help any of our beneficiaries combine this scholarship with multiple other funding sources so that their needs are really met. Anyone have any questions? Dr. Cadet.
Dr. Garcia, the second bullet says, as far as the scholarship is concerned, that they're going to have to submit documents to prove that they are an eligible beneficiary. If everything burned in the school district and records have not been kept and made, how are you going to prove that?
So we have
documents will you accept in lieu of a school district document?
That's the right question, right? So we had a significant discussion about that in the scholarship committee. And what we've come up with is the following. If you can submit a school picture and you're in it, we'll take it. If you can write a letter that says who your teacher or another staff member was, or who the principal was at the time, we'll take it. If one of our many community partners or one of our staff members remembers you as a student, we'll take it, along with any CUME records or electronic records that we may find. We really want to make it easy for people. We really want to make it inclusive for people. And that was a commitment that we made as a committee, along with flexing what the scholarship could cover. Any other questions out there? Well, in the interest of time, a few other things in the judgment. We have to maintain sustained summer support. Prior to the comprehensive plan, the district will not reduce summer support to any third party below levels of summer 2017 or summer 2018. What does that mean in a nutshell? It means basically we got to offer the same programs we offered for the last 2 summers. We got to offer the bridge program. We got to offer the extended school year program. We got to offer Freedom School. We cannot do less. Doesn't say we can't do more, but we cannot do less. We're also not required to support any new third parties, but we could. This one is really interesting. It says, during the judgment, we will not renew any interdistrict attendance or transfer agreements with any other district that treats in-district students differently based on place of residence in the district, nor will we renew an interdistrict transfer agreement with Mill Valley. This actually speaks to a transfer agreement that covers 7 families and 14 kids that live right on the other side of this hill and can throw a rock at Tam Valley School from their front yard. I had a clarification call because I've been working with the Mill Valley superintendent to message those families. And when she and I read this, we had a very strict interpretation. And this is sometimes why it is good to reach out and call and ask questions. Because what we discovered was that the state attorney general actually didn't interpret this as strictly as we did. What he said was, we can't renew that agreement, but we could make a new one. Not based on geographic location, but for instance, based on continuous enrollment. Or we could accept interdistrict transfers on a case-by-case basis, which we do all the time. Often they're granted on the basis of continuing enrollment. Or we could make an entirely new agreement with Mill Valley that maybe would allow for reciprocal enrollment for any Mill Valley kids that wanted to come here in exchange for a certain number of seats in Mill Valley. So this is really interesting, and I'll be working with the Mill Valley superintendent on exactly how to do this. We do actually have a school site visit here at Bayside MLK set up for February the 10th for all 7 of these families, just in case they want to come here. We certainly are inviting them, and we understand that they have a choice as a family of where to go. And you can't force people to go where they don't want to go. Any questions about that? Yeah. They can't stay there under the current agreement. They can't. But we could make a new one, like I just said, or they could choose to enroll in a charter school, or they could choose to ask for a interdistrict transfer to Reed or San Rafael, or people have choice, right? You can't force them to go You can't force people to go nowhere. It doesn't work. I think it would help us get in compliance with the desegregation order, to be quite honest. I'm not entirely sure of the racial makeup of all those families, but I think it could help. So, accountability. Phase one. Accountability could be met with one or more of the following. So any one of these things would have the Attorney General deem that we have met the terms of the agreement. Enrollment of students from all backgrounds from Sausalito Marin City School District. Measured on October the 1st, January the 1st, and May the 1st, or sorry, January 15th and May the 1st. If 20% or more of SMCSD students in K3 or K8 come from Sausalito, the Hill, or the Marina, otherwise known as the Floating Home Community, but they were houseboats when I grew up, we would have met the accountability. If 30% or more of district students K3 or K8 come from Sausalito, the Hill, or the Marina, or are out-of-district students. So out-of-district students could help us get in compliance with this settlement agreement. Or, instead of percentages, straight numbers. 20 or more kids enrolling in the district from Sausalito, the Hill, or the Marina. 40 or more kids enrolled in district operated schools are Sausalito, Hill, or Marina residents. That would get us in compliance. I know. I didn't do it, Miss Terry. That's just what was in the judgment. I have had other people call that out as peculiar. I never knew it was called the Hill either. What you may notice about this, and what I want to call attention to, is that diversity in terms of this agreement and this plan is not about race. It's about geography. It's not about race. It's about geography. No, the Hill is Buckaloo Street. The Hill is heading up right at the pole houses, anything up there. I mean, who live up there? I mean, you know, so the residences that I know of in the Headlands are old Fort Cronkite, Fort Baker homes. We don't have any more kids from there. We used to have. Well, okay, so if you're calling that the Headlands, up Donahue, that's what I would have called it. Would have been Donahue Street, right? We actually do have 2 families that attend our school currently from there. We need 18 more, or 38 more, depending upon which permutation you look at here. Or we need 5 kids from the houseboats and 5 kids from Sausalito and 12 more kids from the Hill. It doesn't really matter. It's either the percentage or the number, and it's about geography. It's not about race. I've had some people that are interested in enrolling in our school ask me that question. Well, my kids are mixed race. Are they going to count? Yes, they're going to count, depending on where you live. Phase 2 accountability. Similarly, enrollment of students from all backgrounds, measured on the same days. These are a little bit higher numbers. 40% or more enrolled K8 from Sausalito, Donahue Street, or the Marina. or are out-of-district students, with 20% coming from those 3 neighborhoods. So it could be 20% out-of-district, 20% kids from those 3 neighborhoods. Or 35% or more of district students enrolled K-8 coming from those 3 neighborhoods, and or 10% out of district and 25% coming from those neighborhoods, or 30% or more coming from those neighborhoods, or just 60 or more kids enrolled K-8 from those 3 neighborhoods. So the quickest way to end it is if after 5 years, or any time before actually, if the phase 2 goal is met, we can request a written report from our monitor, and upon receipt of that report, or after 30 days, we can petition the court to terminate the judgment. We are literally talking about 40 or 60 or more kids. The judgment can also be extended if we don't meet our goals in the first 5 years. It can be extended an additional 5 years until 2030. If the phase 1 goal is not met after 5 years, the district must, after 450 days, so another full year plus, relocate our K-4 program to the Nevada Street campus. Relocate the charter school if there's not enough space for both schools. Make a report on why the phase 1 goal was not met. Cease discretionary funding to non-district schools until the phase 1 goal is met. If after 10 years, the phase 1 goal is met, but the phase 2 goal is not met, within 180 days, we have to create a report as to why. And if after 10 years, the phase 1 goal is not met, the district shall create another comprehensive plan. If after 15 years, the phase 2 goal is not met, we shall create another comprehensive plan. So as you can see, there's some motivation for us to try to get it right the first time. Any questions? All right. It's 3 minutes to 8. I'm almost done. The monitor. This judgment must be overseen by a qualified third-party monitor. The monitor will have access to information and documents to ensure compliance with the judgment. The cost for the monitor, and actually everything else on this plan, will be paid for by the district or philanthropy. The AG must approve the monitor, and no unreasonable costs or fees for the monitor must be charged, subject to Attorney General approval. Very happy to say we're very lucky. We have our monitor here in the house tonight, Dr. Janelle Scotts. She's absolutely wonderful and really highly qualified. And here she is. She's a professor at UC Berkeley in the GSC in the African American Studies Department. She holds the Robert C. and Mary Catherine Burgeonow Distinguished Chair in Educational Disparities. She earned her PhD in Ed Policy from UCLA. I guess sometimes you gotta go Bruins. And Information Studies and a BA in Political Science from UC Berkeley. Go Bears. Prior to earning her doctorate, she taught elementary school in Oakland, California. Her research explores the relationship between education policy and the equality of opportunity and centers on 3 related policy strands: the racial politics of public education, the politics of school choice, marketization, and privatization, and the role of elite and community-based advocacy in shaping public education. Her work has appeared in several edited books and journals, including the Peabody Journal of Education, Educational Policy, American Educational Research Journey, and the Harvard Educational Review. And she is also the editor of School Choice and Diversity, What the Evidence Says. So we're very lucky to have her, as you can see, and she's here tonight. Thank you for being here. So Janelle, I'll stop speaking about you in the third person, has to report directly to the Attorney General. District actions will be required to be reviewed and approved by the monitor to ensure compliance with the judgment. The district may take reasonable and typical actions in response to emergency situations immediately without evaluation. The monitor must evaluate any change of staff certification requirements, any reduction in certificated or classified staff, any acquisition, transfer, disposal, or encumbrance of real property, any of the following with a net cost likely to exceed $50,000. Permanent change of a physical facility, repair of a physical facility. Any of the following with a net cost likely to exceed $100,000. Grant or agreement to provide services, facilities, or property to any student not enrolled in a district-operated school, or any action that will result in anything on the last two slides.
Janelle,
Sir,
will any of your reporting be framed through the lens of equity?
say more about it. What do you mean?
Well, that's the common word that's going around to indicate the narrowing of the gaps, achievement gaps, social services gaps, mental health gaps, that type of thing. But the current, I guess, popularity of the word equity, it's developed into equity policies throughout the state, but it's not down to the point where it is measurable in social systems or educational systems where it's reportable. You can see that there is a closure there, and that parity, educational parity is taking place between institutions, particularly here in North County where the APIs are so high in the other places, and we're working towards that goal. So I'm just saying, it would probably help some of us social activists, who are working around equity, and with the Race Counts Equity Report, and being so visible, that's a visible indicator of the distance between the poor and having not. So I'm just wondering if monitoring this, it could be you like throwing some crumbs.
I mean, my understanding, which is still very much emerging as we go through this process in terms of my role, is that it's big, and you just saw that it's a fairly bounded one. It's really to ensure compliance with the judgment, right? And to report on the progress towards that compliance. So that's sort of the floor, right? I think what you're asking about is the ceiling, right? There's a lot of room between the compliance and getting at some of these more thick issues around equity.
I guess a lot of people talk about, but I'm really interested in getting information back to the people.
Ricardo, one thing I want to maybe invite our community into, and I would invite everybody in this room, but our whole community, not just the Desegregation Advisory Group, but maybe we need our own thing too. But it would be really interesting for our community to even create a definition of the word that you just put out. What does equity mean, right? Because I bet if we took a poll right now, we'd have 10 different definitions in this room. And so when we start thinking about measure it, I think it's important we come to some community-wide agreement even on what does it mean. And that would be some exciting work to do as part of this process, and something that might add some value. And so I'd invite us all to think about how we could get all the right people that need to be in the room to agree on that definition. First, to get in the room, and then to go through a process to define it, and then maybe we could think about the proper way to measure it. Yeah. So there's a few time limits. Any time limit in the judgment can be extended by mutual agreement in writing by the AG in the district, or by showing good cause by the order of the court. That is how I got an extension on the plan. Failure to complete any provision in the judgment in a timely fashion may result in the AG imposing the following: no discretionary funds to a non-district operated school, no agreements to provide facilities, services, or property to in-district students attending non-district schools. If the district fails to comply with the judgment for more than 180 days, the Attorney General may direct the district to allocate or expend any unassigned funding not part of a 5% economic reserve or otherwise restricted to complete the tardy provision of this judgment. We can modify this in the future. We may jointly stipulate changes, modifications, and amendments to the judgment, or terminate the judgment effective after joint motion filed and granted by the court. This may occur at any time. So if we were to accomplish these goals in 2 or 3 years, we could terminate the judgment in 2 or 3 years. Particularly if we merge with another district, or schools in our district merge, or schools in our district close, or new schools are created, right? The AG has continuing jurisdiction of the court and compliance. There's a commitment to work collaboratively with the monitor and the Attorney General to resolve any violations of the judgment prior to formal dispute resolution. The court retains jurisdiction and enforcement of the judgment until the judgment is terminated, and for orders, directions, or interpretations necessary to carry out the judgment, modifications of injunctions or relief, enforcement or punishment for violations. The judgment became effective immediately, August the 8th, 2019. I've been working hard ever since. We all have, truth be told. Judgment does not alter any powers of the State Attorney General which they may use to monitor district compliance with the judgment. The injunctions in this judgment apply to all current and future district trustees, successors, directors, employees, agents, independent contractors, partners, associates, and any of their present and future representatives for the entirety, duration of the judgment. It doesn't matter who's in my seat. Doesn't matter who's in any other seat. If you're here, we're responsible. Any questions? Absolutely. Thank you for asking. ¿Ya lista? Sí, cómo no. Pregúntame, le voy a traducir. Déjame traducir. So she's asking, before anything else happens, can we ask the Attorney General to look into the statistics around children who were affected by segregation that are coming from Marin City and coming from the canal, including kids that have left? Because what she's saying is, over the time, a lot of people left. And a lot of people just left the community that may have been affected by these things. And so she's asking that there be some investigation or inquiry into the numbers and the effects on those people as well. And so she was saying that some parents were accused of educational neglect by the court system for the outcomes for their kids, when really the outcomes, the educational outcomes for their students were a result of what was happening in our school. And so some people were unfairly accused, some people had consequences, some people had their kids put in the system. And so even she's sharing one of her kids, she lost custody of one of her kids because she was accused of educational neglect. And can we look into those cases and those students? And so, yeah, and so we'll definitely forward that to the Attorney General. Thank you. Thank you everyone else for coming and sitting. It's 8:10. I hope you have a wonderful evening. If you want to be a part of the Desegregation Advisory Group, we have another meeting next week, and then we have a meeting every 2 weeks after that. Please go ahead and write your name here on this piece of paper for me. If you would like to be a part of the Desegregation Advisory Group, we will be meeting next week and then again every 2 weeks thereafter. Please go ahead and write your name for me there.